So Genshin is a game whose combat highly revolves around utilizing elements and their respective elemental reaction. At first glance, everything seems fine until you realize that physical damage actually does exist in the game. Hello everyone, Ethereal here again, making another discussion type video where we'll just talk about the elephant in the room, just simply because I kind of want to address and just kind of, tell people about whatever that's going on out there. So, physical damage is actually one of the 8 damage types in the game, with the other 7 being, the 7 elements, with Dendro being released soon, basically literally tomorrow by the time this audio is getting recorded. And yeah, it's one of the damage types. In terms of what kind of sources can you do physical damage from, most characters, if not a majority of characters in the game, can do physical damage from performing non-elemental infused normal attacks. Basically your M1 or your very first talent, except Catalyst characters, because all Catalyst characters have elemental normal attacks. Other sources would include weapon passives such as Prototype Amidst and Debate Club, or even the damage done by a majority of non-elemental enemies. However, there are some exceptions to this, which includes the entirety of Eula's kit, which is her elemental skill and elemental burst, Xinyans burst, fall damage sustained by enemies, and the 4-piece effect of the Ocean Hued Climb artifact. So when I was writing this script, I was thinking, oh, what disclaimer should I put up this time? And then I realized there's not really any disclaimer to put out, because I'll just be talking about the facts that is already available in the game. And before we move on, one thing I want you guys to keep in mind, you viewers, hello, is that right now we only have 3 physical based DPS or physical DPS. We have the original Razor, we have the Copium Xinyan, and then we have the only decent physical DPS, Eula. So before we go over how physical is right now in the game, let's go over some general properties about what physical damage does. So the first property of physical damage is that since the biggest source of physical damage is from a character's normal attack, physical damage tends to be very single target oriented. At least right now there are no characters in the game that has access to do AoE physical damage. Of course, we're not exactly counting weapon passives that have AoE physical damage. The second point to physical damage is that it doesn't interact with elements in any shape or form, in a sense where if you were to do Vaporize, Melt, Dendro, Electrocharge, doing physical on them, you only do physical damage, nothing will happen. The only exception is Shatter. And what exactly is Shatter? Shatter is an after effect if you were to do a heavy attack on an enemy that is affected by Frozen, or enemies that are frozen, which is a Hydra and Cryo meeting together. And when you trigger Shatter, what's going to happen is that the enemies are going to be broken out of their frozen status and they will receive physical damage. And the final property for physical is that it basically has the lowest priority, if not a non-existent priority, when it comes to elemental infusion. So such elemental infusion sources include Chongyun's elemental skill, maybe Hu Tao's elemental skill for herself, Constellation 6 Bennett, and basically Kazuha C6 and yada yada. So what I mean by lowest priority, I mean basically there is no such ability to kind of re-infuse your elemental weapon back to physical. So it is what it is. Okay, so let's move on to just some points to just kind of see and take a look at how physical is right now. So in terms of like how it is faring right now. So first and foremost, physical right now is heavily reliant on superconduct. And superconduct is an elemental reaction when Cryo meets Electro that decreases the enemy's physical resistance by 40%. And why I feel like this is a bad thing is because if you take away superconduct, right, there are no other reliable ways to reduce enemies' physical resistance aside from character skills and talents such as Zhongli's shield, or Shenhe's burst, or maybe Eula's elemental skill. And because superconduct is basically required if you want to play a physical damage based build, you will need at least 2 characters out of your party of 4 just to proc superconduct, preferably basically a Cryo character and an Electro character, to make sure that your physical DPS can benefit from the element. So that's why in the current state of things, it's very much preferred that the physical DPS that you are running is either Cryo or Electro, so that they can individually proc superconduct. So you can basically free up one slot for another support or another buffer or whatnot. And that's probably one of the few reasons why Xinyan is probably not as good as a physical DPS compared to the other 2, because she is Pyro, so she doesn't have a way to proc superconduct for herself, which means you need to take like 2 other slots to fit a Cryo and Electro character just to proc superconduct on enemies. And then we move on to the second point. Physical is only good against humanoid enemies, and I put like 2 question marks in my script right now, because all humanoid enemies, basically in the likes of Fatui, Treasure Holders, Karagi and Nobushis, all of them have a negative 20% physical resistance. You can probably look the statistics under the Genshin wiki under the resistance tab. And the thing is, it sounds nice at first. You might be thinking, oh, humanoid enemies take more damage from physical, so surely you could run elemental against anyone else, and then you can run a physical damage-based team against humanoid enemies. The problem with that statement is that you can basically run elemental teams against humanoid enemies and they would do just as well, if not better. And then the other thing to consider is that most other enemies in the game right now has at least 30% physical res. Like if you were to name a few examples, we have the Mitachill, those big Hilichil boys that has 30% physical res. We have the GOV Shap Hatchling with 30%, with their adult GOV Shap being 50%. We have the giant elemental Lava Chills with 70% physical res. Not to mention, you can look at one of the strongest enemies in the game would be the automatons or the robot enemies. Like the Ruin Hunters have 70% physical res while the Ruin Hunters have 50% physical resistance. You could argue that Super Conduct and maybe mixed with Zhongli Shield or certain abilities can help shred this resistance back to a neutral 10%. But at the same time, if you're going to go that far to just decrease the resistance to neutral, you're better off using elemental teams, because the game right now, based on the enemy design, is actually better for you to just run elemental teams rather than run a physical main DPS team. So moving on to the third point, due to the limited lineup, which we'll talk about in the next point later, physical right now only has one playstyle, which is you have one physical main DPS, you get an Electro and a Cryo character just to proc Super Conduct, and then you add the final slot as a support to kind of just act as a, maybe you can use the support slot as a buffer, healer or shielder. And the idea is that it's similar to the whole main DPS team composition, where you get 3 supports and you get 1 main DPS doing all the damage. The thing about this kind of composition is that you can basically run elemental teams with a fair share of main DPS, sub DPS and supports, and it has more variety, because right now I think our lineup for physical damage is very limited. And of course, like I've already mentioned this before, but which one would you prefer to run? Would you prefer to run a team of 4 with 1 main DPS and 3 supports to funnel all their buffing to this 1 DPS and hope that they do enough damage to kinda kill the enemies off? Or would you get just 1 main DPS versus 3 supports who can also do some sub DPS, basically like Shengling or Xingqiu or Albedo, Eula, yada yada, the lineup goes on. I think most people would choose the latter because you can kinda take advantage of playing 4 different characters in your party. I feel like it's a bit boring to just play one character and the other 3 characters don't really see much usage in the team aside from existing to funnel all the damage to the main DPS. And moving on to the fourth point is that due to the limited lineup for physical based characters, there isn't really much going on right now. Like we mentioned earlier, if you guys remember, the only physical based characters we have is Eula, Xinyan and Razor, and out of 3 of them, only Razor ascends with physical damage bonus. So the thing about this whole argument is that we have very little physical based DPS, not to mention even physical based support. Basically physical as a whole doesn't really have much going on, and I feel like it's kind of like it's been abandoned. While we're getting our final and 7th element in Dendro in Sumeru coming up in patch 3.0, physical is kind of just left in the dust with nothing much going on. And if we go through all 3 of these DPS, Xinyan, after doing some testing and after watching someone like Mr. OK Code, who is a Xinyan main who has like some ridiculous stats and some whale weapons, even his Constellation 6 Xinyan does damage that isn't really that great if you think about it. So Xinyan is overall a main DPS with a very confusing split scaling that isn't even effective in one way or the other. And then we have Razor, which is okay. I have yet to build my Razor, but I've seen some really good Razor builds and I think he's alright. But he does have an alternate build where you can run 4 Instructor with triple EM and you can kind of use him as a reaction bot. And then the final physical DPS character is Eula, which as of right now is a decent physical main DPS at Constellation 0, but has a stupidly extremely strong power buff or power creep buff at Constellation 6. And the whole thing about having a limited lineups with the whole physical base characters is that we don't really have any physical based support right now. Like think about it this way, we don't have a character that's basically Shengling with Pyronado, but the Pyronado does physical damage, or we don't have like something like Xingqiu's Rain Swords, but the physical version. So we move on to the next point. And another problem with physical or the current state of physical is that it's a very single target. You could say the exception would be Eula and Xinyan Burst, but I think that AoE to a certain degree is kind of copium. So Eula's kit has some AoE, but it's kind of like saying Xinyan's burst has a small amount of AoE. Like I mentioned, it's copium because the AoE, even with Eula, is not even comparable to the likes of Shengling's Pyronado, Venti's freaking burst or Kazuha's suction, which is literally getting buffed in patch 3.0, and even something as simple like Noelle's normal attack after she uses her burst, so she gets the huge range and elemental infusion on her normal attacks. And that's the thing. I feel like it's the biggest problem about physical, is that there is no way to consistently hit multiple enemies because we don't have any characters with the kit that enhances their AoE. Like outside of Eula Constellation 6, right? I think most physical damage characters in single target is not even comparable to their elemental variants. Like the best example, as we mentioned in the previous video, it would be the likes of Hu Tao or Yoimiya. And I definitely feel like because we don't have any characters that has the ability to like enhance their AoE for their normal attacks, for their physical damage, I feel like it's just physical really pales off when it goes against enemies with really high resistance to physical and when you're going against a mob. And let's move on to the final point. Physical compared to elemental is such in a weird point that it's like a standalone when you compare to elements. So which raises the next issue is that physical damage has a lack of reactions. Like I mentioned earlier, elemental reactions basically have 7 different elements, and now Dendro's gonna be coming out. We're gonna get a huge array of different reactions. The meta may be shaken a bit, and then you look back at physical, and it's just kind of there. It's like an old-timer. It's even older than D-Loop if you think about it. Like physical doesn't have any interaction with elemental reactions, nor does it have any reaction on itself. So because Genshin's combat right now and the state of or the strength or the weaknesses of every element is highly dependent on their elemental reactions. You know, that's why you could say Pyro, Hydro and Cryo, the trinity of elements is really strong because they have access to reactions like Vaporize, Melt, Electro Charge, Frozen, while something like Electro falls off a bit in comparison because they're overloaded, staggers enemies and kind of knocks them away. And then we have the likes of Electro Charge is probably the only viable one. Superconduct literally only exists for physical characters, which is kind of sad to a certain degree. So I actually kind of thought about it when I look back at other RPGs or maybe other different video games in terms of different types of statuses that maybe Hoyo could actually apply. So here are some of my ideas. So what if we have a physical based reaction where after 10 hits on a single enemy they will receive some sort of status effect or some sort of like quote-unquote reaction. So let's say if you use sword characters, it will cause like a bleeding thing. So imagine burning when it's like in Dendro with Pyro, except it's just like a physical version. And then let's say the bleed stacks. And for Claymore, maybe we have a status like called break, or maybe basically it's like a defense break. If you hit a certain number of times, their defense decreases, and let's say it stacks up to 3 times so that they take more damage over time. And then for maybe bow characters, you would have like some form of movement slow. You slow down their animation, you slow down their movement speed, yada yada yada. I think it would be really cool if Hoyo can kind of do something about physical so that it doesn't fall behind to elemental. But yeah, but that's how the current state of physical is in the game right now. And knowing Hoyo, I don't think anything will change anytime soon. So yeah, this is a bit shorter than my previous video because I think anyone who plays physical, anyone who's played this game long enough kind of knows how physical damage is at the current state. So if we were to close things off, physical damage has a lot of potential if Hoyoverse develops it beyond what it is right now. However, until that happens, I don't think we'll really see any big reason to run a physical damage build unless it's for characters like the 3 we mentioned earlier that has a kit that is centered around building a physical damage build. So like I remember trying running physical Ganyu or basically physical official right now, and this is what I feel about physical builds in the current state of Genshin. Physical builds is like the random thing you tried for fun and it ends up being somewhat fun, but you only do it like for just one day and then after that you just forgot it happened. So yeah, video is 15 minutes, very good. So I guess that's all I can really say about. I guess for now we'll just enjoy Sumeru. We'll see what Dendro can bring to the table and maybe pray someday that somehow Hoyo can watch this video on YouTube. I don't even know how they can do that, but yeah, let's just maybe one day physical damage will be reworked, maybe buff, so that it doesn't fall behind elements. But until then, I hope you guys enjoy Sumeru and enjoy your Dendro characters. I'm gonna be waiting for Candice in 3.1. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!